friend of mine, Gershon Binyamin ben Eliezer, passed away last week on his 40th birthday. It says in the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu died on his birthday also, and that this often reveals that someone has completed their tikkun, they've done what they're here to do, and they're completed. Gershon, it's turning out, was a hidden tzaddik. He would find all sorts of ways to give to people without them realizing it, so they could preserve their dignity. He had a hidden charity that no one knew about, including his wife. He would pay for balloons for children on their birthday that they thought the store was giving out free balloons. Really, he would pay the bill. He paid for people to go to yeshiva without them realizing, saying he found a scholarship. And it's turning out more and more stories are being revealed about who he really was at his core, at his center. So in the merit of Gershon Binyamin ben Eliezer, any learning from this few minutes that we're speaking together should be an Aliyah Neshama for him. And he's really impacted a whole community in the Old City in Jerusalem and way beyond, Canada and Chicago. And he impacted me also personally. So I would like to discuss this idea of being a giver, seeing it was such an essence of Gershon. That Rav Dessler says at the root of each one of us, we're either a giver or a taker. That's it. We're either a giver or a taker. There's no in-between, half-half. At any given moment in life, you're giving or taking. So students often ask, well, if everyone's a giver, how can we give if everyone's a giver? So how does that even work? So it turns out there's a key difference between taking and receiving. Taking is really where I'm selfish and my self-interest is the primary thing. I'm really interested in what can I get out of this, whatever it is. Receiving, on the other hand, is really a receiving for the sake of the connection. It's really a type of giving, to receive by wanting to make the person who's giving to you feel better. No matter how many pairs of socks your mother buys you, it still makes a difference if you say, thanks, Mom, I really needed this pair. When you're focused on the connection and not what you're getting, then you're coming from a place of giving, even in the receiving. So Rav Dessler talks about this giving-receiving cycle is what forms connection. And interestingly, the word for Jew, Yehudi, is from lahodot, which means to thank. That means the essence of all Jews is really to be grateful, to be able to thank. Lahodot also means to confess, to admit. I admit I couldn't be where I am without what you gave me. It's acknowledging that we're not in control, acknowledging that we can't do it all independently. We're dependent on each other, and especially on God. So acknowledging where things come from and being humble enough to acknowledge that is the essence of all Jews. It's the foundation also of Judaism, that it's very hard to be a giver if you don't experience the gratitude also of receiving. So you see that this giving and this receiving cycle go together. And it says in Bereshis, in chapter 2, verse 6, that all the vegetation was sitting under the ground, and it wasn't sprouting, it wasn't coming through the ground. And it says that Hashem did not send rain, ki lo himtir, he did not send rain. And there was no man to work the ground. That was one of the reasons he did not send rain. Rashi talks about that. And the Maharal comments on Rashi, that on the pasuk ki lo himtir, that he did not send rain, that there was no man to appreciate the goodness. There needed to be someone there to appreciate the goodness, to see the good, for Hashem to want to send rain. So it's a fundamental principle in Judaism to train ourselves to see the good, to feel grateful, to practice gratitude, and to practice giving. There are many levels of giving. It turns out that you can give in the hope that you really want something back, or you can give as long as someone else acknowledges you, as long as someone else appreciates you, as long as someone else says thank you, as long as someone else gives you some significance, then you're happy to give. There's many levels of this type of giving in our own intention. Turns out Gershon Binyamin ben Eliezer, was on this level of unconditional giving, where he was giving, as we say, lishma, with nothing back in return, and not even nothing back in return. He didn't even want to be known that he was the giver. So he very much believed that if you get any recognition back, then on some level, even though it's a very high level that we can't really relate to, you're benefiting a little bit, and it's not as pure as it could be. And he practiced and developed himself to this level of wanting to give without anyone knowing, in secrecy, in Bitzinor, hidden, in a hidden way. And this value of hiddenness is very, very much valued in Judaism, that what's hidden is blessed. And we see that blessing came down on the ground, rain, symbolizing bracha, blessing, from brecha, pool, comes down onto the ground when there is someone there to recognize the good. So with that in mind, may we all practice this week in trying to give, maybe even try 1 or 2 times anonymously without getting any recognition back, and know that you've done 1 or 2 of those things as a pure act of giving this week. See you Tuesday night, sold 88 Madison Avenue. Look forward to seeing you then.